something before getting into the lesson. I told several people this the other day. I went to the hospital, visited somebody in the hospital this last week in Tuscaloosa, and I did something coming home that I have not done in years. I drove 55 miles an hour. Amen. I drove the speed limit, and I'm telling you, it felt like I was crawling. But I was coming home, and I got behind somebody, and my first thought was, why are they going so slow? And, I was looking around, waiting until I could get in a straightaway. Coming back from Tuscaloosa on 171, there's so many curves, you got to get on a straightaway. And all of a sudden I thought, you know what, preacher, why don't you practice what it is you've been espousing? So now that's a little too strong. That was from the women's section. Don't y'all know women keep silent in the church? Don't you know that passage? I'm telling you, let me tell you something. What I did. I cruised at 55 miles an hour. Of course, people were going around me like crazy. But I just enjoyed the creation of God. I enjoyed the trees. I did some praying, did some singing, just cruising along at 55 miles an hour. And here's the interesting thing. It took me 3 minutes longer to get home. I saved 3 minutes. Got to learn to slow down. Anyway, thought I'd share that with you. Petco is one of the largest pet stores in America. They have 630 locations nationwide. Several years ago, a story ran on the news in Lake Forest, California, about a Petco driver who was on El Toro Boulevard in Lake Forest, California, and he pulled up to a red light on El Toro, and he got out of his truck, and he had a 2x4, and he walked around to the back of his truck, and he took that 2x4 and went whap, 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 and he got back in his truck, drove to the next red light, and stopped, got out of his truck with a 2x4, went back to the back, hit the side of the truck, whap, whap, whap. He did this all the way down El Toro Boulevard. Well, finally, about the fifth light, a guy behind him who'd been behind the entire time got out of his car and said, "Man, what are you doing? What is it you're doing?" He said, "Well, I got to tell you, man," he said, I'm delivering canaries. He said, "I've got 2 tons of canaries, and this is a 1-ton truck. So I've got to keep half of them flying all the time." You know what? A lot of us are like that Petco driver, overloaded with stuff in the air all the time. In a very real sense, that describes the American way of life to a T. We're going, we're doing, we're racing, and all the time doing all these things, we're juggling 5 oranges just to keep it going. What happens when we live that kind of lifestyle, and all of us get caught up into that from time to time, but when we allow ourselves to make that a habit, what will happen is we'll finally crash and burn, and then we're left to pick up the pieces. And don't tell me that's not the case, because I've been counseling for 10 years, and I see it all the time. Here's a very painful consequence of that kind of lifestyle. Adults, are you paying attention? Here's a very, very painful part of that kind of lifestyle. Our kids learn it from us. Our kids are playing in every sport. They're doing every activity. They're taking piano. They're doing soccer. They're doing baseball. They're going to dances. They're doing homework. You know what my kids have been doing the last 2 weekends at home? Think they're outside playing on a Saturday on their free day? They're on the bed asleep. Our children are learning the hurry up, let's go lifestyle from us. And like that Petco truck driver, we're trying to keep half of it in the air just so we can keep functioning. We are not designed to carry that kind of load. We're not. We need to lighten our load, not get a bigger truck. Now that's what this series of lessons is about. This is not about, okay, you got a 1-ton truck and you got 2 tons of stuff, then get a 2-ton truck. You know why that won't work? Because as soon as we get a 2-ton truck, we'll have 3 tons of stuff. This is not about getting a bigger truck. This is about learning to stress manage and lighten our load. What we need is a seminar in stress management. And fortunately, Jesus gives us one. This could possibly be the most important lesson that you will ever hear on stress management and how to lighten your load. It comes right from the text and addresses exactly what we're talking about. If we'll simply not only listen to Jesus and what he says, but model it the same way he did, then good things will happen. You know, I've been amazed. I've read through the New Testament, I don't know how many times, and I never do I see Jesus running around like a chicken with his head cut off, going from place to place. At best, he saunters. I never see him. In fact, you do with this what you want. Come, our brother Lazarus is sick. Come down to Bethany and fix him. And he waited 3 days, 4 days. He knew God was going to do something powerful. He didn't get in a rush. I never see him just rushing here and there. What I do see him doing is often withdrawing to lonely places and praying. I see him do that a lot. Our stress will be reduced if we'll model him. Our enjoyment of life will increase. You can't enjoy life when you're full of stress. And on the whole, we'll be more mature, more balanced. How to lighten your load can be found in this passage. 3 simple verses that we all know and have heard many times. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If you had to choose one passage, just one passage for stress management, this one would be it. This passage holds the keys on how to lighten your load, how to reduce your stress, how to improve your life. I couldn't pass it up. I absolutely love the translation of the message, from the message in this passage. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. Isn't that awesome? Learn how to live freely and lightly. Either way, NIV, King James, or the Message, all the versions have it right. The first step is always the same: come to Jesus. It always starts right here. Let me tell you guys something. I'm not standing up here today telling you to turn your life to Christ and give your life to Christ if you haven't already, because that's what preachers do. Well, we pay our preacher to stand up and say, come to Christ. That's not why I got into this vocation. I got into this vocation because I've got a testimony to give. As my friend Martin Lawrence says in his thing, can I get a witness? You got one right here. I'm telling you to turn to Christ because I have tried absolutely everything else and nothing else worked. I've tried the illegal and I've tried the legal and none of it worked. It always starts with coming to Christ. The answer had always been there. I just ignored it or refused to see it for many years. When you read the text, when you read Christ's story in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, people came to him for many different reasons. Most of the time they were coming to him to get healed. Sometimes they came to him they were hungry and he reproduced food and fed them. Sometimes they came for protection. Sometimes they came for teaching. Not in this case. Here it's different. He says, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burdened? Are you sick and tired of religion? Are you burned out on life in general? And then it starts with this: come to me. And if you're worn down, if you're overloaded, if you're burned out, you'll find some rest right here. Do you realize that most folks, including us disciples sometimes, don't always make Jesus the first choice when it comes to finding rest? It's amazing to me to watch these new commercials. Energy drinks are the latest craze. They've been out for about a year, maybe 2 years. It's absolutely amazing to me. Have you seen this commercial? There's several of them. One of them cracks me up. The guy standing there and there's this sort of green starburst in the back. All he's doing is going and he's kicking himself in the head. Have you seen that? Here's what AMP is. Made by Mountain Dew. That ought to tell you something. One of the highest content of caffeine sodas on the market. It's made by Mountain Dew. It's a mixture of high amounts of caffeine, maltodextrose, which is enriched sugar, and herbs like ginseng, guarana, all these herbs that the Chinese have used for millenniums for energy and for potency. Now, here's the question. Why did Mountain Dew come up with an energy drink to start with? Because the consumers demanded. Listen to what they said. Consumers have been asking us for an energy drink that delivers great taste along with function and refreshment. If you could write that down, write it down. Function and refreshment, the two things that go missing when we're completely worn out. When we are worn out and stressed out and overburdened and overloaded, refreshment and function are what you lose. And so the message is this: if you're overloaded and tired and stressed out, then drink AMP and you'll be refreshed and you can function again. That's exactly what I want. Come home, be just dead dog tired, irritable, and then amp up on sugar and caffeine and Chinese herbs. That's exactly what I want. Think that works? Give it to your kids. See how they respond. it turns, how to say this? I'll just be honest. My generation is Generation X. And we have turned to all kinds of things. Generation X turns to coke, to meth, other forms of speed. And I'm asking you this morning, to what do you turn? Maybe Jesus asked you this question: are you worn out? Are you tired? Are you burned out? And you answer, yes, I am. But then what do you do? To where do you turn? Maybe you turn to propping your feet up at home with the remote control. Maybe you turn to the internet. Maybe you turn to a pill. Maybe you turn to binging out on Oreos, some other form of escape. I don't know. But Jesus says, come to me. Come to me. Now listen. He doesn't say come to church. He doesn't say come to fellowships. He doesn't say come to Bible study. That's all good and fine. It starts though with the relationship with Jesus. You've got to come to Him before any of that other stuff makes sense. You've got to come to Him first. Not to all these other things to find rest, but to Him. Your life has to, let me tell you something, your life has to start there or your life will go nowhere. Now that's just the facts. I'm telling you that from Scripture. I'm telling you that from my personal experience. And if you're honest, you'll know it's true too. If you don't start there, your life will go nowhere but down. Billy Graham ended every single one of his messages in his revivals when he traveled around with the song, Just As I Am. You know it. Just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee. O Lamb of God, I come. I come. You know what that says? It says, that lyric says, I don't have an argument. I have no excuse. I have nothing to offer, and I come. And Jesus says, that's it exactly. That's it exactly. If you are waiting for your life to get straightened out, to come to Jesus, you'll die in that condition. If you're waiting to get off the booze, to quit chasing skirts, whatever you're doing, that you think, well, I got to get this straightened up and then I'll start going to church. No, let me tell you something different. Don't worry about that first. Don't worry about getting rid of all that stuff first. Come to Jesus first and get a relationship with Him, and then plug into a church family, because Jesus knows if He gets your heart, your tail end will follow. Do you think you can handle life on your own? You can't. You have failed miserably, and so have I. Have you forgotten what God is like? If you see God in the police chopper hovering over your life, waiting to shoot you down with assault rifles for every mistake you make, that's the wrong picture. The picture is of God waiting in anticipation at the end of the road. And when He sees you coming, He'll run and meet you and throw a party and put a new robe on you and a new ring and have a big fat calf barbecue. Now that's the picture of God. Jesus says, come to me. Get in a quiet place and go to Him. No cell phone, no TV, no pager. Get quiet with God. Get honest with God and come to Christ. When you do that, though, you have to understand that you have to give up control. I'll be the first to admit in my life, the number one reason in my life that I have stress is I think I have to be in control of everything. It just won't get done unless I do it. It all depends on me. If it is to be, it's up to me. Wrong. If it is to be, it's up to God. It always has been that way. It always will be that way. The more that I try and the more that you try to take control of every situation, the more stress you're going to experience and the more overloaded you're going to be. Guess what, guys? If you've got your fingers in all the pies, you won't be able to taste any of them. If you've got too many irons in the fire, you can't do any branding of cattle. If you've got too many activities, too much on your to-do list, then you're trying to take control of something that's not yours to control. Jesus says, come to me when you're tired and take my yoke upon you. Now that appears to be a contradiction. Are you tired? Then come to me for rest and you can have my yoke. Now here's the thing about that yoke thing. When I was a kid, I remember hearing this passage, and the only yoke I knew of was the kind that you scrambled. All I knew about yokes was I didn't like them runny. And even then as a kid, I sort of had to force myself to get over the idea of eating a baby chicken. You know, the yoke thing just sort of always hung with me. I couldn't get past it. That's not the kind of yoke that Jesus is talking about. It's the yoke that goes on the back of oxen. It's a wooden harness of sorts. And now you have to be thinking, now wait a minute. That doesn't sound relaxing. Jesus says, are you tired and you're worn out and you're burdened? Then come to me and let me throw this on your back so you can carry something else. That's what it sounds like. The problem with that is we don't understand what Jesus is meaning by that. You see, Jesus, as we all know, was a carpenter, right? He was a carpenter. Thing is, they didn't put up too many duplexes in his day. There wasn't a lot of house building going on. So most carpenters in that day made farm implements. And the legend goes, and some of the first century writings, not from the Bible, say that Jesus was a great yoke maker. That he made yokes to put on oxen to plow the field. And that shows you right there, if you think that what the yoke is about is putting extra burden on you, at least that's what I used to think, that shows just how ignorant I am about a yoke. A yoke is not for putting more burden on you. A yoke is so you can share the burden. That's what a yoke does. You don't yoke one ox, you yoke two, so that they can share the load. Jesus uses this symbol, I don't think just because he made them, but because it's about partnership. There are two of us working, not just one. And here's the great part. Jesus is my partner. Take my yoke upon you. Get in here with me, and I'll help you shoulder the load. I'll help you carry it. If you're overloaded and burned out, you come walk with me a while, and I'll teach you how to live freely and lightly. He's not saying, come to me and I'm going to just we're going to plow these fields so you can be more worn out. He's saying, come to me and let me share it with you. Let me be your partner. The psalmist says, pile your troubles on God's shoulders. He'll carry your load. He'll help you out. He'll never let good people topple into ruin. You know what, guys? There's a bunch of different ways to topple into ruin. A bunch. And I've tried a few, and so have you. But one of the greatest ways to topple into ruin is let yourself and your life get overloaded and leave Jesus out. If we are overloaded today, it's because we're not yoked to Christ. We're either yoked to our work, our kids, our checkbooks, our bass boats, our golf clubs, but not to Christ. Just because you've come to Christ, and that's the first step, doesn't mean you're automatically yoked to Him. You can jerk that yoke off anytime you want. It's a daily process of getting up, and I'm trying to do this. Swing my legs over the edge of the bed, stop for a second, stretch, and sit there for a minute and pray before I ever get out of bed. God, help me to be yoked together with Christ today. Let me walk at His pace and do what He does. We move together with Christ, we move at the same pace, and we give up control. And if we don't have control, that means God does, if I'm yoked to Christ. So you come to Him, you give up control, and then the last thing, you got to learn to trust. I know, I'm going to confess it right out in the open. I know that there are people here maybe who are sick and tired of me talking about week in, week out, learning how to trust. Trust, 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 trust. Faith, 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 faith. That's all you ever talk about, Randy. Can't you sound like a broken record. Can't you get on something else? Let me tell you something. For those of you that are sick and tired of hearing that, I know 10 times as many people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. It all boils down to trust. Without trust, without faith, the Bible says, it is impossible to please God. Without trust, without faith, you cannot please God without it. You think that working your tail end off until you're dog tired pleases God? You think He's looking down going, oh, you're doing such a good job. You're working 12 hours a day and you're ignoring your kids and you don't hardly even talk to your spouse. Boy, good job, Randy. You think that's what God's doing? God is looking at my heart, looking at it and saying, are you trusting in me? Are you letting me shoulder the burden? Are you letting me set the pace of your life? That's what He's asking. And that's what pleases Him. Faith pleases God. Trust pleases God. Relying on God's power is what pleases Him, as if we need to be reminded of that from every passage in the Old Testament where God always picked the least of the least and whittled all the armies down to be just a few people so He could go out and kick somebody's tail. Now that's how He worked. Why? So He could show who was in control and who it was that you needed to have faith in. I can think of no two better antidotes to that kind of thinking than what Jesus says He is. He says He's gentle and He's humble in heart. Learn from me, he says. Is this your regular practice? Do you practice this regularly? Learning from him. I get a kick out of this. And understand, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I get a kick out of sometimes people when they're trying to compliment me, maybe to somebody else in my hearing, and they'll say, oh, well, you're really like my preacher. He knows a whole lot. He knows a whole lot about the Bible. I recognize that God has blessed me with a good long-term memory. I have a good long-term memory. My short-term memory is terrible. But my long-term is good. I can remember on which page of which side of the Bible the passage exists. I may not know exactly where it is, but I can even see it in my mind. I've been blessed with that. But let me tell you something. It's one thing to know the Bible. It's another thing to know the author. And I can know the Bible from beginning to end and not know the author, and that means absolutely nothing to God. I appreciate the compliment. Well, my preacher, you're going to like my preacher. He knows a lot about the Bible. You know what? Satan knows a whole lot more about the Bible than all the preachers in this county combined, in this state combined. But he doesn't love the Lord. He hates him. It's not the knowledge that does it. It's the knowledge and the relationship of the author. I have to know Jesus as Lord, as the one who saves me, as brother, as friend. And I can think of no better ways to do that, to start there, than to be gentle and humble. You have to really be honest with yourself, as I do every day. Does pride have a big part in this? How much of a part does pride play in my stress level? That ambitious spirit which seeks to divide and conquer. Veni, vici, veni, vidi, vidi, vici. Veni, vidi, vici. Say it again. Veni, vidi, vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. Julius Caesar. That's how we approach it. I want that. I need that. Work harder, longer hours, borrow the money, get this, get that. How much of pride is involved in that? I can handle this, I can get that. Those are all just symptoms of a big ego. And Solomon reminds us that pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. The Message has it great too. First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. Jesus says, learn from me. Watch what I do, then do it. Listen to what I say, then say those same things, then do it. Guys, you want to know what the most difficult thing for me in ministry is? The most difficult thing for me in ministry is not being on call 24/7. The most difficult thing in ministry for me is not preparing sermons week in and week out and trying to come up with something fresh every week. The most difficult part of my ministry is not in dealing with people and hearing the heartbreak and doing funerals and seeing death. The most difficult part of ministry for me is that I'm a fixer and I can't fix anybody. That is so hard for me. I spent yesterday afternoon fixing sinkholes in my front yard and putting in dirt and watering it down and putting turf back on top and patting it down. And I walked in and I felt good because I fixed something. I can't fix people. I want to. But only God can fix people. The best I can do is be a chef in his kitchen that doles out the food. That's the best I can do. I am nobody's Savior, and neither are you. That's Jesus' job, because Christ has already done it all. Guys, I know you come to me and we talk sometimes and we do counseling, and I want you to know, though, I can't solve your problems. I can't even solve mine. But I've got a secret for you. I know the one who can. And maybe even if you don't come to complete resolution, I know the one who will go with you through the problems, through thick and thin. He might not remove the obstacles, but he'll go with you over them, through them, around them, whatever it takes. There are some people here today whose system is crashing because of overload. You're a train wreck waiting to happen. And the only solution for that kind of life is to turn to Jesus, to give up control, and to learn to trust him more. This is no joke. You have to be yoked to Christ if you want your load lightened.